Hey everybody, welcome to my bonus trope talk, Pick My Brain. I wanted to just talk to you guys a little bit about 1998's rom-com, You've Got Mail. And one kind of interesting thing about this is that the conventions of romance have changed over time, so I think at this point we would just consider this a sweet romance because it ends in a kiss at the end, as opposed to kind of like the more graphic content that we tend to get in romances that are rom-coms these days. But anyway, that's just an interesting kind of a little aside to think about of how conventions change over time. But what do I love about this movie and why I think it's still relevant is it really shows simple plot, complex characters. Really nicely done trope of enemies to lovers supports this whole movie. So I'm going to take you through and show you how I would outline it, doing those 6 steps that I talk about in the Trope Thesaurus Romance. So the first thing we want to talk about is Kathleen's character tropes, and I like to use at least 3, as you guys know. There's almost always more that you can add, but just kind of 3 to start. And so for her, she's the boss of her bookstore. She has a rival with the big box store setting up around the corner with Joe Fox, the Tom Hanks character, and there's a strong family component, and that the bookstore employees are like her family, and she's running the bookstore as part of a legacy to her mom. Joe's character is he's very much the alpha hole in the business world. He's a billionaire, and at the same time, he's very attached to his family. We see a lot of scenes with him interacting with his younger cousin and brother. Primary relationship tropes for this movie, like I said, would be enemies to lovers, but there's also a huge secret disguise, hidden element where they function as pen pals, basically. Other relationship tropes are opposites attract, forced proximity. I just talked about the disguise, hidden identity, and secrets. Now, Kathleen's goal, motivation, and conflict. Her goal is she wants to keep the bookstore open, and her motivation is her legacy. She talks a lot about how this was the bookstore her mom started, and that was a large part of her life. And the conflict is Joe's bookstore is opening up and threatening to shut them down. Joe's goal, motivation, and conflict is he's going to open his massive chain bookstore. He also has a family legacy he's dealing with. The Fox book family with his uncle and his dad. And the conflict is his giant bookstore is going to close not only hers, but several other small bookstores in the area. And he feels kind of bad about it, but he also says, it's nothing personal, it's business. So what makes the storyline so strong is that their goals are mutually exclusive. From the very beginning, we know that both of these characters can't win. The conflict is just really inherent to the plot, which is great. That means the plot's established, and now the story is free to dig into the relationships between the characters, because we aren't wondering what's going to happen next, and the characters aren't wandering around looking for things to happen to them. The threat of discovery drives the story tension. So if you haven't seen this or heard about it, this story is basically the idea of they're corresponding anonymously through email, which at 1998 was rather a new thing, and then in real life they're business rivals. So that's really the whole story is the conflict between those two things going on. And how does the story tease out the reveal? So if we know we have this hidden identity trope going through it, we need to figure out how is the best way to reveal that. And this is an original story by Nora Ephron, and she did this like a fantastic job because she didn't wait until the very end. She did a mini reveal about halfway through where Tom Hanks figures out who Kathleen's real identity is when they arrange to meet. But he doesn't tell her that, and he keeps his identity hidden. So this way we're able to get part of the fulfillment of, a little bit of we can see he cares about her and he's trying to advance the friendship end of their relationship in real life while they're still corresponding anonymously. but we also have the conflict of like what's going to happen when she finds out who he really is. World building details. This movie did a great job of showing what it was like to be a working professional in New York City, in the book world, the families of the characters and their friend groups, and both of them dealing with their legacies. So those kind of details are what really cemented us in their stories. So what I think is so cool about this is it's basically from the Save the Cat, which you know I love, where they talk about the same thing, only different. So this was, Nora Ephron took a spin on the story told in letters or epistolary novel, and she did it through the email, which was a really kind of cool thing to do. Now I want to talk to you guys a little bit about how exactly the enemies to lovers trope is set up, and by breaking it down into like 5 points of ways that we can see it throughout the story. So the first one is we got to plant the seed in our audience's mind that this trope matters. So in this story, we see this story opens with Kathleen and Joe corresponding anonymously, and we also see Joe planning to open his big bookstore right around the corner from Kathleen. Showtime. This is where we have to have at least one scene, but usually multiple scenes that show us how the conflict is increasing. So these are scenes where Kathleen and Joe are meeting regularly as business rivals at a party, running into each other in grocery stores. They live in the same neighborhood. Now they're aware of each other, so they keep bumping into each other. And we're able to see that conflict. And at the same time, they're becoming increasingly attracted to each other through their anonymous correspondence. The reveal. Now, I talked about this a little bit, but they agreed to meet, and Joe gets to the meeting place and looks in and sees who Kathleen is, and he knows that she's never going to accept him because he's busy putting her out of business. So he basically pretends to stand her up, and later comes in as Joe Fox, and they kind of spar, but he doesn't tell her who he is. But this gives us the reveal of how much is at stake for the enemies to lovers trope, because she basically says, you know, the man she's waiting for would never be like you. The fallout. Okay, so Joe tries to be a friend to Kathleen once her business goes under. She's building a new life for herself. They again keep running into each other in various places around town. And he just kind of tries to encourage her to take her life in a new direction. She's planning on doing some writing of children's books and has been approached by editors. But she's kind of using this as an opportunity to step out into her life as opposed to just carrying on her mother's legacy. The resolution. So this is how the trope resolves. And in romance, it's going to be our happily ever after. As I just talked a little bit about her store closing and making new plans, and that's when she's still smitten with her online correspondent, because that's still going on, and they arrange another time to meet, and this time is the reveal where Joe reveals who he is. And it's really great because what she says when she sees him is, "I was hoping it was you." So it's like kind of the merger of those two storylines. Now, there's something, one thing that's I'm really curious about is there's this new movie out called Love Again, which seems to me like it has a very similar twist on some of the ideas of this, of You've Got Mail. There's definitely the hidden identity component, and it seems to be about cell phone numbers. I don't think it has the enemies to lovers component. But anyway, I just think it's really interesting that this kind of epistolary hidden identity novel idea keeps kind of coming back in different ways with how technology changes. So check it out. It would be really interesting to see how it holds up in terms of the things we were just talking about. Okay, if you guys want even more trope talk, check out my YouTube channel. I'm putting some new stuff up there. And I'm busy working on a Christmas Romance in July workshop. It'll be out in early July, and I hope to have the registration up in the next couple weeks. And at the same time, I have the book that'll be coming out also in early July. And as you can see, yes, I really do love Christmas in July. My store is open on BackerKit if you wanted to order any of the Trope Thesaurus romance books or the companion workbook. So check it out. And please join my mailing list, and I can keep you up to date on everything. Let me know if you have any questions. You can always reach me at my email. And I hope this was helpful and gives you some idea of how to deal with tropes using enemies to lovers, how to develop it. But go back and rewatch that movie and just kind of see how really well structured it is to have all this interpersonal conflict. I think Nora Ephron did a really great job. So thanks for joining me. Take care.